The first man Maeve Kelleher ever dragged out of the Atlantic opened his eyes with a gun in his hand. The storm had already swallowed one ship. It was trying to swallow Blackwater Lighthouse next. Wind struck the tower hard enough to shake dust from the stone walls. Waves exploded against the cliffs beneath the lantern room, climbing 40 feet into the night before collapsing back into darkness. Through the rain-streaked glass, the revolving beams swept across a sea torn white by foam. Maeve had lived through storms that broke windows, snapped mooring chains, and hurled fishing boats onto the rocks like toys. She had never seen a man come out of one alive. The flare appeared just after midnight. One red spark above the water, then another. She was descending the iron stairs before she had time to think. Her waterproof coat hung open over a grey sweater. Her dark hair had escaped its braid. The left side of her face, where the cold always settled first, had gone numb beneath the spray blowing through the service door. She crossed the narrow causeway between the lighthouse and the boathouse with a rescue line wrapped around her waist. The sea hated being approached. It slapped the rocks beneath her boots and tried to drag her down every time she moved closer to the cove. A black shape rolled between the waves. Not driftwood, a man. Maeve anchored the line around an iron ring, waited until the water receded, then ran down the slick stones. The next wave caught her at the knees. She nearly fell. The man's body struck the rocks with enough force to break bone, but one hand lifted from the water and closed around her wrist. Not weakly, not desperately, with command. His face was bloodied. Dark hair lay plastered across his forehead. His black evening jacket had been torn open, revealing a white shirt stained red beneath his ribs. His eyes opened. They were almost black. Alert despite the blood loss. Dangerous despite the sea. A pistol appeared between them. Maeve froze. The barrel pressed beneath her jaw. Rain ran down his face. His breathing was shallow, but his grip never shook. "Who sent you?" he asked. His accent was Italian. His voice was low and controlled, as if he were standing in a boardroom instead of dying against an Irish cliff. Maeve looked down at him. The lighthouse beam passed over her face. For 1 second, her artificial left eye caught the light differently from the right. The stranger noticed. Everyone did. His gaze paused, but he did not recoil. That surprised her more than the gun. "No one sent me," she said. "You fired the flare." His eyes searched hers. Behind him, something burned far out on the water. The remains of a luxury yacht had split in 2 orange flames, fighting the storm. "There were others," he said. "I saw one body." "Alive?" "No." He lowered the pistol half an inch. The wave behind him rose. Maeve saw it before he did. She grabbed his collar and threw herself backward. The water struck the rocks where his skull had been. Together, they slid across the stone, tangled in rope and rain. He made no sound when the movement tore open the wound beneath his ribs. His face only tightened. Maeve pulled him toward the path. "You can threaten me again after I stop you from bleeding to death." He looked toward the burning yacht. "They'll come." "Who?" The beam swept across the sea. For the briefest moment, 3 white lights appeared beyond the wreck. Boats, moving without navigation lamps, coming toward the island. The stranger saw them. His expression changed. Not fear, calculation. He pushed the pistol into Maeve's hand. "Take me inside." She stared at the weapon. "Now," he said, "or everyone on this island dies. There is no one else on this island." His eyes held hers. "Then they will make sure there never is." The first bullet struck the lighthouse door 6 minutes later. Maeve had gotten the stranger inside the service room and cut away his shirt. The wound was not from the wreck. It was a gunshot, the bullet entering beneath his ribs and exiting through his back. Someone had tried to kill him before the sea finished the job. She pressed folded towels against the wound while he sat against the stone wall, pale but conscious. A second bullet shattered the narrow window above the sink. Maeve dropped. The stranger grabbed her by the waist and pulled her behind an iron storage cabinet. Glass scattered across the floor. Outside, engines roared Near the cove. How many entrances? He asked. Two. Where? Main door and lantern balcony? Radio? Upstairs. Phone? Dead in storms. His hand tightened around the pistol. Of course. Maeve looked at the blood spreading through the towel. You need a doctor. I need ammunition. You have 3 rounds. His gaze shifted toward her. You counted. I restore navigation systems and maintain emergency supplies alone. Counting is how I avoid dying. Something almost changed in his face. Not a smile, something more restrained. Interest. A boot struck the exterior door. Then another. Maeve reached beneath the maintenance bench and pulled out an old 12-gauge shotgun. The stranger's eyes followed the movement. Do you know how to use that? My father taught me. Your father made good decisions. He died making one. The door shuddered. The stranger leaned his head back against the wall. Name? What? Yours. Why? If I die, I prefer knowing whose floor I bled on. Maeve Kelleher. He nodded once. Luca. That all? For now. The lock began to split. Luca tried to stand. His knees gave way. Maeve caught him before he hit the floor. For one suspended second, his hand closed around her shoulder, and his face came within inches of hers. His gaze moved over her features. Rainwater still clung to her lashes. Her artificial eye was slightly lighter than the real one, almost silver, when the beam passed through the room. Most people looked away quickly, embarrassed by their own curiosity. Luca did not. He looked directly at both eyes. You should be afraid, he said. I am. You don't act like it. I've learned fear is more useful when no one can see it. The door burst inward. Maeve fired. The blast struck the frame and drove the first attacker backward. Luca moved at the same instant. Wounded or not, he was fast. He seized the man's wrist, turned the gun aside, and drove the attacker into the stone wall. The movement opened Luca's wound again, but he did not slow. He took the man's weapon and shot twice through the doorway. Silence followed. Not safety. Silence. Luca looked down at the dead man. His expression had emptied. The stranger Maeve had pulled from the sea was gone. What remained was someone accustomed to making violence look inevitable. A second engine approached from the north side. Luca checked the stolen weapon. Lantern room, he said. Maeve stared at him. You barely know where you are. I know the highest point is the strongest position. It's also a glass cage. Then we make them regret climbing. He took one step and nearly collapsed. Maeve moved beneath his arm. I can walk. You can lie. His jaw hardened. She pulled him toward the stairs anyway. They climbed together as the storm hammered the tower. By the time they reached the lantern room, Luca had left blood on every 5th step. Maeve locked the iron hatch beneath them and crossed to the control panel. The enormous Fresnel lens turned around them, casting alternating bands of darkness and brilliant white light across their faces. Below, men moved between the rocks. 5, possibly 6. One carried a rifle. Luca stood behind Maeve and looked through the rain. Turn off the light. No. They can see us. Ships need it. There are no ships in this weather. There is always someone who believes the sea will forgive arrogance. His gaze fell on her. And you intend to save them. I intend to keep the light on. The rifle fired. Glass cracked above her head. Luca seized her and drove her to the floor, covering her with his body. The bullet struck the metal housing behind them. His breath brushed her ear. For a moment, Maeve could feel the full weight of him, the heat of his blood through her clothes, and the controlled violence in the arm braced beside her head. His hand had come up instinctively to protect the left side of her face. The scarred side, the vulnerable side. He realized it at the same moment she did. He pulled back slowly. Stay down. You stay down. I'm harder to kill. You washed ashore. Unconscious. A temporary inconvenience. Despite herself, she almost laughed. Then, one of the attackers reached the balcony. Luca fired through the shattered pane. The man disappeared into the storm. Another began climbing from the western maintenance ladder. Maeve crawled to the emergency foghorn control and struck the manual release. The horn erupted at close range. The attacker lost his grip and fell backward. Luca stared at her. That was cruel. You approve? I do. More gunfire struck the tower. The lens kept turning. Light swept over the men below, blinding them every 12 seconds. Maeve watched their movement. On the next beam, she said. Luca understood immediately. When the light passed across the rocks again, he fired twice. One attacker fell. The others scattered. A siren sounded faintly beyond the storm. The Coast Guard. Maeve had triggered an emergency beacon from the service room before the first door broke. The remaining attackers retreated toward their boats. Luca kept the gun trained on them until the engines disappeared into darkness. Only then did his body fail. He went down beside the lens. Maeve caught his head before it struck the metal floor. His eyes closed. His fingers remained wrapped around her wrist. Luca. He did not answer. The lighthouse beam crossed his face. For the first time, he looked young enough to be mortal. Maeve pressed her hand against his wound and listened as the rescue helicopter grew louder above the storm. She had no idea that by sunrise, half of Europe would know Luca Viscari was alive. By sunset, 2 criminal empires would know exactly where to find him. And by the end of the week, the most feared man in Italy would choose a lonely lighthouse keeper over his own blood. The Coast Guard took Luca to a private hospital in Galway under armed escort. Maeve spent the morning answering questions from Garda officers who clearly did not believe her answers. She told them she had seen a burning yacht. She told them armed men attacked the lighthouse. She told them the injured stranger gave his name as Luca. She did not tell them he had fought like someone trained to kill in close spaces. She did not tell them the dead attacker had called him Don Viscari before losing consciousness. And she did not tell them that Luca had looked back at her from the helicopter stretcher with the expression of a man memorizing the only place he intended to return to. By noon, the newspapers had a name. Luca Viscari survive Atlantique assassination. Italian crime lord found off Irish coast. Mafia war reaches Galway. Maeve turned off the radio. She was standing in the lighthouse kitchen, holding a cup of tea that had gone cold. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the sea deceptively calm. Blackwater Island sat 6 miles from the mainland. It was little more than a blade of rock with a lighthouse, an old keeper's cottage, a storage shed, and a cove usable only during mild weather. Maeve had lived there alone for 4 years. Before that, her father had kept the light. Before him, her grandfather. The Kelleher's had spent more than a century guiding strangers safely past rocks that had killed men from every country in Europe. Maeve had never imagined one of those strangers would bring an army back with him. At 3 in the afternoon, a black helicopter appeared over the water. She stepped onto the balcony. The aircraft landed on the flat northern shelf of rock, blades whipping salt and dust around the island. 4 men in dark coats emerged first. Then Luca. He had left the hospital against medical advice. That was obvious from the way he favored one side and from the white bandage visible beneath his black shirt. Yet he walked toward the lighthouse as if pain were an insult he refused to acknowledge. Maeve met him at the door. You should be in a hospital. You should have guards. I have locks. You had locks last night. They held for almost 4 minutes. His gaze shifted over the repaired doorframe, the boarded window, and the shotgun leaning beside the kitchen wall. He looked angrier with every detail, not at her, at the evidence of what had happened. Behind him stood 3 men. The oldest was silver-haired and sharply dressed, with the watchful stillness of someone who saw everything. The second was broad and scarred, built like a former soldier. The third was younger, with a tablet in his hand and an earpiece beneath his collar. Luca entered without invitation. Maeve stepped in front of him. No. His eyebrows lifted slightly. No, you do not walk into my home because armed men follow you. They followed me to protect you. They can protect me from outside. This building has 6 vulnerable points. It has 2 entrances. The windows, balcony, fuel access, radio mast, and tunnel beneath the foundation make 6. Maeve stared at him. How do you know about the tunnel? His silence answered badly. She turned toward the silver-haired man. Who are you? Enzo Marini, he said. Mr. Viscari's advisor. Tell Mr. Viscari He cannot occupy an Irish lighthouse. Enzo glanced toward Luca. I suspect he has already understood your position. I have, Luca said. I disagree with it. Maeve folded her arms. You were attacked because of your business. You survived. You should leave before they come back. They will come back whether I leave or not. Why? Luca's gaze settled on her artificial eye for half a heartbeat before returning to the other. Because you saw them. I saw men in masks. You saved me. That is not evidence. To my enemies, it is allegiance. Maeve felt a coldness move through her that had nothing to do with the sea, then explained publicly that I had no idea who you were. No, why not? Because it would sound like fear. I am afraid. I am not. His voice was calm, absolute. It made her angrier. This is my life. And someone has decided it is useful leverage. You do not get to decide what happens next. His eyes narrowed. No, he said. But I decide whether you face it alone. Maeve looked at the men behind him. You expect me to believe you came back out of gratitude? No. The answer was too immediate. Something tightened beneath her ribs. Then why? Luca stepped closer, not threateningly. Still, the room seemed smaller when he moved. Because the men who attacked this lighthouse work for Cormac Doyle. Maeve knew the name. Everyone along the western coast did. Officially, the Doyle family owned shipping companies, hotels, fishing fleets, and half the private docks between Galway and Cork. Unofficially, people lowered their voices when black SUVs appeared near the harbour. My father knew him, Maeve said. I know. The words landed with the weight of a confession. She went still. How? Luca's gaze remained unreadable. Your father once worked on Doyle's ships. He maintained emergency navigation systems. He also discovered routes that did not appear in shipping records. Maeve remembered her father's silences, the nights he came home smelling of diesel and rain, the locked drawer she had never been allowed to open, the fear in his face during the final year of his life. He died of a heart attack, she said. Luca did not answer. Her artificial eye suddenly felt too tight in its socket, a discomfort that appeared whenever she was exhausted or frightened. She removed it only when alone. No one had seen the empty, scarred socket since her father's funeral. She turned away before Luca could notice her blinking. What are you saying? I am saying your father did not die naturally. The kitchen became silent except for the lighthouse mechanism ticking through the walls. Maeve looked back at him. Get out. Maeve, get out. He found something Doyle needed hidden. You do not know anything about my father. I know he contacted my family 17 years ago. Her breath stopped. The accident. She had been 14 when the small motorboat exploded near Blackwater Sound. Her father had pulled her from the burning water. The propeller housing had shattered, sending metal through her face and destroying her left eye. The official report blamed a fuel line failure. Luca's expression changed when he saw understanding reach her. The accident, she whispered, was not an accident. The room tilted. Maeve gripped the edge of the table. Luca moved toward her. She raised one hand. Do not touch me. He stopped instantly. The obedience unsettled her more than force would have. What did my father find? A ledger documenting shipments between the Doyle organization and men inside the Viscari family. Your family? Yes. And you expect me to let you stay here? I expect nothing from you. You brought armed men to my island. I brought the minimum. The minimum? There are 12 more on the mainland. Maeve stared at him. Enzo looked almost apologetic. Luca did not. He reached into his coat and placed a weathered brass key on the table. Maeve recognized it. Her father's desk key, the one that had disappeared after his funeral. Her voice nearly failed. Where did you get that? From the wreck. You had it on the yacht? Yes. Why? Because your father gave it to someone in my family before he died. Who? Luca's jaw tightened. My older brother. Maeve knew from the news that Luca's older brother had died 9 years earlier in a car bombing in Naples. She looked at the key. The metal had been blackened by fire. What does it open? I was hoping you could tell me. She could, not the desk. The lighthouse. There was a sealed room beneath the old keeper's cottage that her father had forbidden her to enter after the accident. The lock had been replaced years ago. The original keyhole remained hidden behind a brass wall plate. Maeve covered the key with her hand before Luca could see recognition in her face. You are leaving. Tonight? Now. Cormac Doyle already knows you have the key. He does not know what it opens. He knows your father gave it to us. Then take it. She pushed the key toward him. Luca did not look down. You think the key is why I came back? What else could it be? His expression became colder, not because she had insulted him, because she had misunderstood something he would not explain. You pulled me out of the sea, he said. That made you mine. To protect. Maeve's anger sharpened. I am not yours. No. The word came quietly. His gaze lowered to her mouth for the briefest instant, then lifted again. But your life is now tied to mine. That is not the same thing. To men like Doyle, it is. He turned toward Enzo. Secure the perimeter. Maeve stepped in front of the door. I said no. Luca stopped close enough for her to smell rain and antiseptic on him. His voice lowered. You may hate me tomorrow. I already dislike you today. That is useful. It will keep you alert. You are impossible. I am alive. He leaned slightly closer. So are you. I intend to keep it that way. That night, the black SUVs arrived on the mainland. Maeve watched them through binoculars from the lantern balcony. 6 vehicles parked along the harbor road near the dock used by the supply boat. Men stepped out beneath umbrellas, all wearing dark coats. At their center stood Cormac Doyle. Even at a distance, he looked less like a criminal than a politician arriving for a funeral. Tall, silver blonde, and elegant, he moved with the confidence of a man who believed the coastline belonged to him. Luca stood beside Maeve. He had refused pain medication because it slowed his reflexes. His shirt was buttoned to the throat now, hiding the bandage. Can he reach the island tonight? Maeve asked. Not without being seen. He owns the harbor master. He owns many people. You sound impressed. I respect accurate threats. She lowered the binoculars. Did he order the explosion that took my eye? I believe so. Believe? I do not make accusations without proof. You kill people without proof? His gaze moved to her. No. She did not know whether to believe him. The lighthouse beam swept over the sea between them and the mainland. Cormac looked toward the island at the exact moment the light passed. Then he lifted one hand, a gesture almost like greeting. Maeve felt Luca become still beside her. Does he know we are watching? She asked. Yes. What does he want? For me to leave? Why? Because the evidence I carried from the yacht can destroy him. What evidence? It went down with the ship. Then why does he care? Because he thinks I transferred it to you. Maeve turned. Did you? No. Would you tell me if you had? Pause. No. She laughed once, bitterly. At least you are honest about dishonesty. Luca looked toward the coast. My family has ordered me back to Italy. Then go. I cannot. Cannot? Or will not? Both. Because of the key? Because Doyle will take you the moment I leave. You have men. Men can be bought. And you cannot? His attention returned to her. No. The certainty in his voice disturbed her. Everyone can be bought. Then you have known disappointing men. I have known enough. He looked at the artificial eye again. This time, Maeve did not pretend not to notice. You keep looking at it. I look at you. People usually avoid that side. I am not people. What do you see? His answer came after a moment. Someone survived what was meant to destroy her. Maeve looked away first. The wind had softened, but the cold remained. Do not romanticize scars, she said. They itch. They ache. They make strangers stare. There is nothing poetic about losing part of your body. I did not say it was poetic. What are you saying? That whoever caused it failed. His hand rested on the railing near hers, close, not touching. Maeve became acutely aware of the space between their fingers. Below, A light flashed 3 times from the harbor. Luca's expression hardened. What does that mean? She asked. A negotiation request. Will you meet him? Yes. Where? Here. No. It is the safest location. For you? For him. Maeve stared at him. Luca turned toward the stairwell. Tomorrow at noon, Cormac Doyle will come to this lighthouse. And you decided that, without asking me. Yes. She followed him down the spiral stairs. You do not own this island. No. You do not command me. No. You are behaving as though both are true. He stopped on the landing below her. Maeve nearly walked into him. He looked up. The position put her 1 step higher, but she still felt the force of his presence. I am behaving, he said, as though every decision has consequences measured in bodies, and you believe only you understand those consequences. I believe I have buried more of them. The words ended the argument, not because she agreed, because there was something in his face then she had not seen before. Not softness. Grief hardened into function. He continued down. Maeve remained on the step, watching him disappear into the shadows. At noon the next day, Cormac Doyle arrived in a white boat, carrying no visible weapons. Luca's men searched him anyway. Maeve watched from the kitchen window as he crossed the path toward the lighthouse in a charcoal suit, untouched by sea spray. Cormac looked at the island with recognition. He had been there before. The realization made her stomach tighten. Luca received him in the old keeper's cottage rather than the tower. Maeve was told to remain upstairs. She waited exactly 4 minutes before using the hidden ventilation passage her father had built between the pantry and the storage room. The passage carried sound. She crouched behind the wall and listened. You are making an emotional decision, Cormac said. His voice was smooth, educated, almost gentle. Do not insult me, Luca replied. I am describing the facts. Your uncle ordered you home. Your council has withdrawn support. 2 of your captains are already speaking to your cousin. Then my cousin will die disappointed. You would risk civil war for a woman you met in the ocean? Silence. Maeve leaned closer to the vent. Cormac continued. She is not what you think. I have not told you what I think. You believe she is innocent. I believe you are afraid of her. Cormac laughed softly. Maeve Kelleher is a lighthouse keeper with 1 eye. Luca's chair moved against the floor. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Lower, more dangerous. You will never refer to her that way again. A chill moved through Maeve. Cormac went silent. Then he said, There it is. What? The mistake. You sailed 6 miles to identify it? I sailed 6 miles to offer you safe passage. Leave Ireland. Give me the brass key. The woman remains untouched. No. You know what your refusal means. Yes. Your family will call you traitor. They already have. You will lose Naples. Cities can be reclaimed. You may lose your name. My name has survived worse men than you. Cormac Sahil. You do not even know her. I know enough. You know she saved your life. That is enough. Maeve closed her eyes. There was no warmth in Luca's voice. That made the words more powerful. He did not sound infatuated. He sounded bound. Cormac's tone sharpened. The key opens a chamber beneath the keeper's cottage. Inside is a navigation ledger written by Eamon Kelleher. It contains routes, payments, and names. Some belong to my organization. Others belong to yours. Maeve stopped breathing. You killed him for it. Luca said, I offered him wealth. You sabotaged his daughter's boat. I frightened him. You took her eye. There was a crack of wood. Maeve moved closer to the vent. She heard Cormac inhale. Luca had likely grabbed him. When he spoke, each word was quiet. You hurt her once, without consequence, because I did not know she existed. You will not have that privilege twice. Cormac's voice came strained, and now the mighty Luca Vescari becomes sentimental. No, a pause. Territorial. The word struck Maeve somewhere deep and unwelcome. Cormac gave a breathless laugh. That will destroy you faster. Then watch closely. A moment later, the cottage door opened. Maeve moved away from the vent and entered the kitchen before anyone could see where she had been. Cormac appeared in the hall, adjusting his collar. A bruise was forming beneath his jaw. He stopped when he saw her. His eyes moved over her face with practiced sympathy. Maeve. She had not told him to use her name. You knew my father. I did. You killed him. Cormac's expression did not change. Luca tells dramatic stories. Did you sabotage the boat? He smiled faintly. You were always direct. Even as a child. The room went cold. Maeve reached for the knife on the kitchen counter. Luca appeared behind Cormac. His gaze dropped to her hand. Maeve. Cormac looked amused. You see, he already speaks as though he owns your violence. Luca's attention remained on her. Put down the knife. Why? Because he wants you to use it. Cormac smiled. Maeve hated that Luca was right. She released the handle. Cormac stepped closer. Luca moved between them immediately. The action was so fast and absolute that Cormac's smile vanished. I came to offer clarity, Cormac said. Luca cannot stay. His own family has declared him disloyal. Every man he brought to this island will eventually choose between his salary and his survival. My men have already chosen, Luca replied. Men choose repeatedly. Cormac looked around Luca toward Maeve. When they change their minds, call me. I will protect you from the man who brought this war to your door. Maeve met his eyes. You brought the war here 17 years ago? For the first time, the polish cracked. Only slightly, but she saw it. Cormac stepped outside. At the end of the path, he turned back. Ask Luca what was on the yacht, he called. Then ask why every person who knew about it is dead. His boat left beneath a sky turning black with another storm. Maeve waited until it vanished. Then she faced Luca. What was on the yacht? A witness. Who? Sean Doyle, Cormac's younger brother. Maeve had seen his face in newspapers beside charity galas and shipping launches. What did he know? Everything. And now he is dead. Yes. Did you kill him? No. Did Cormac? Luca did not answer. Maeve understood. Why would he kill his own brother? Sean intended to testify. To whom? American federal prosecutors, Europol, and an Italian anti-mafia unit. And you were transporting him? Yes. To Ireland? To meet someone who could decrypt his records. Who? Luca looked at the brass key lying on the table. Your father. My father is dead. Sean believed Eamon left instructions with you. I was 14 when the boat exploded. He believed you remembered more than you realized. Maeve laughed in disbelief. I remember fire. I remember metal cutting through my face. I remember my father holding my head above the water while blood filled my mouth. Her voice broke on the last word. She hated it. Luca's hand lifted. He almost reached for her cheek, then stopped before touching. His fingers curled slowly. What else? He asked. Nothing. Think. No. Maeve. I said no. His expression hardened, but he stepped back. That restraint mattered. She wished it did not. You should leave, she said. I will not. Your family thinks you are a traitor. They are correct. Her eyes narrowed. You admit it? I chose against them. For what? For you. The answer made anger rise through her because it was too much, too soon, and impossible to trust. You do not know me. I know you ran into a killing sea for a stranger. That was my duty. You fired on armed men to defend someone who threatened you. That was survival. You kept the lighthouse burning while bullets broke the glass. That was my job. You believe everything noble in you is merely obligation, and you believe obsession is devotion. His gaze sharpened. I am not obsessed. Then go home. Silence stretched between them. The lighthouse beam moved across the wall. Luca looked at her with the terrible stillness of a man confronting a truth he intended to deny. I cannot, he said. That evening, the first of Luca's men betrayed him. His name was Riccardo Bellini. Maeve discovered him in the sealed room beneath the keeper's cottage with the brass key in his hand. She had gone down alone after midnight. The hidden entrance lay behind a rusted cabinet in the pantry. The key opened a narrow stone staircase descending beneath the island. Her father had taken her there once when she was a child, before the accident. She remembered the smell of damp stone. She remembered a wall covered in maps. She remembered him saying, "Every ship leaves a story behind, Maeve. The sea keeps most of them. We keep the ones that matter." Ricardo stood at the bottom of the stairs beside an open steel door. He was one of Luca's youngest guards. His pistol pointed at her. "I'm sorry," he said. Maeve looked past him. Inside the chamber, shelves held old logbooks, charts, photographs, and sealed metal cases. Her father's archive. "You work for Doyle. I work for my family. Luca is your family. Not anymore." Footsteps sounded above. Ricardo grabbed Maeve and pulled her against his chest. The pistol pressed to her temple. Luca appeared on the stairs. He wore no jacket, only black trousers and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled back. His wound had reopened beneath the bandage. His face became empty when he saw the gun against Maeve. "Release her," he said. Ricardo's hand trembled. "Your uncle promised immunity. My uncle promises what he cannot afford." "I pug." "He says you lost authority." Luca descended one step. Ricardo pushed the barrel harder against Maeve's skin. "Stop." Luca stopped. Maeve felt his attention move over everything. Ricardo's stance, the distance between them, the low ceiling, her position. He was calculating how much of her could be harmed before he killed the man holding her. His eyes met hers. Maeve understood something passed in that look. Not a plan. Trust. He needed her to move. "Ricardo," Luca said, "you have known me 12 years. Yes. Then you know I will not forgive this. You chose her over us. I chose her over men who sold children through shipping containers. That is not what your uncle said. My uncle lies. And you don't?" Luca's gaze did not leave Maeve. Constantly, her heartbeat slowed. The honesty was the signal. Maeve drove her heel down on Ricardo's foot and threw her head backward. Bone cracked. The gun fired into the ceiling. Luca crossed the space before the echo ended. He struck Ricardo's wrist, seized the weapon, and forced him against the stone wall. Ricardo reached for a knife. Luca fired once. The young man collapsed. Maeve stood frozen. The gunshot rang inside her skull. Luca turned immediately. He crossed to her, then stopped one step away. "Are you hurt?" She looked at Ricardo's body. "You killed him." "Yes. You could have disarmed him. He would have tried again." "You do not know that." "I do." His calmness frightened her. Then she saw his hand. It was shaking, only slightly. Luca hid it at his side. Not fear of the dead man, fear for her. He looked at the red mark forming near her temple. His hand lifted again. This time Maeve did not tell him to stop. His thumb hovered half an inch from her skin. He still did not touch. "May I?" he asked. The question was so unexpected that her anger weakened. She nodded. His thumb brushed the mark gently. Nothing in his face softened, but the touch did. The same hand that had fired without hesitation moved across her skin as though she was something that could break. Maeve's breath caught. Luca noticed. His eyes dropped to her mouth. The moment tightened. Too close. Too quiet. Then the radio on his belt crackled. "Boss." Movement on the west water. He stepped back first. Maeve hated the relief and disappointment that arrived together. They searched the archive until dawn. Her father had recorded 17 years of vessel movements through coded Lighthouse logs, ship names, dates, cargo weights, weather conditions, and strange notations marked with black triangles. Luca recognized the pattern. "Human cargo," he said. Maeve stared at the page. "You are sure?" "Yes." "How?" "Because my father used the same system." She looked at him. "Your father trafficked people. My father did many things. And you inherited his empire. I inherited the responsibility of deciding which parts survived. Which parts did? Smuggling, weapons, political leverage, leveraging 19, ASP 200S. He met her gaze without shame or apology. "Not people. You expect that to make you moral?" "No." The answer silenced her. He did not ask to be absolved. That made it harder to reduce him to one thing. On the final shelf, Maeve found a small wooden box. Inside lay a child's red ribbon, a cracked compass, and a photograph of her father standing beside a much younger Luca. Luca could not have been more than 23. His arm was in a sling. Her father stood beside him on the harbour, one hand resting on his shoulder. Maeve looked from the photograph to Luca. "You knew him." "Yes." "You lied. I withheld the timing. You said he contacted your family." "He contacted me." "Why?" Luca picked up the photograph. "Because I was on one of Doyle's ships." "As cargo?" "As security." Her stomach tightened. "What happened?" "I discovered children in a sealed container." The words came without emotion. He had learned to speak of horror as inventory. "I opened it." He continued. "My father's men ordered me to close it. I refused. A fight followed. I was shot and thrown overboard." "My father found you." "Yes." "The way I found you." His eyes lifted to hers. "Yes." The parallel moved between them like something alive. "Did he save the children?" "He helped me alert authorities. 12 survived." "And Doyle?" "Doyle lost a shipment and began searching for the leak." "My father and me." Maeve looked at the photograph again. "Why did he never tell me?" "Because he wanted you outside this world." "He failed." "No." Luca's voice lowered. "He gave you 17 years outside it. That is not failure." Maeve's vision blurred. She turned away. The empty socket behind her artificial eye had begun to ache from wearing it too long. She rubbed the side of her face. Luca noticed. "Is it painful?" "Sometimes. You should rest." "I am not discussing my eye with you. You are in pain. It is none of your concern." "Everything that can hurt you concerns me." She looked at him sharply. "That is exactly the problem." His expression became unreadable. "You think protection gives you ownership." "No. You call me yours to protect. You fill my island with armed men. You decide who comes here, who leaves, where I stand during a negotiation. I decide what keeps you alive. You decide what makes you feel in control." The words struck. He saw it, a tiny change in his eyes. Maeve continued. "You could not save Sean Doyle. You could not save your brother. You could not save my father. So now you think if you control every door around me, death cannot enter." Luca moved closer. His voice remained quiet, but danger had entered it. "Do not speak about things you do not understand." "I understand grief. You understand surviving. So do you." "No." He looked at the photograph. "I understand remaining alive." There was a difference. Maeve heard it. Before she could answer, Enzo entered the chamber. "Luca." Something in his tone changed the room. "What?" "Your uncle has arrived in Galway." Luca's face hardened. "With how many?" 30 men. "Purpose?" "He has called a council meeting. Without me. He intends to remove you." Maeve looked between them. "Can he?" Enzo answered carefully. "If Luca refuses the council's order to return, they can declare him outside the protection of the Viscari name." "What does that mean?" Luca closed the archive ledger. "It means anyone may kill me without starting a war." Maeve stared at him. "And you still will not leave?" "No." "Why?" He looked at her. This time, there was no evasion. "Because Cormac will come the moment I do." The council met in a luxury hotel overlooking Galway Bay. Luca insisted Maeve remain on the island. Maeve insisted otherwise. Their argument lasted 9 minutes. It ended when she walked past him carrying her coat. He caught her wrist. Not painfully, firmly. "You are not attending. You need the archive records." "I need copies. Some codes are visual. I have to explain them." "Enzo can listen." "Enzo did not spend 20 years reading my father's handwriting." Luca's jaw tightened. "Cormac will know you are there. He already knows where I live. The hotel is less defensible. So is a lighthouse surrounded by water. You are staying." Maeve looked down at his hand around her wrist. He released her immediately. That gave her the advantage. "Ask me," she said. His expression darkened. "What?" "Ask me to stay." "I am not asking." "Then I am going." He stared at her. Around them, 6 armed men pretended not to listen. At last, Luca said, "Please, remain here." The words seemed to cost him. Maeve almost smiled. "No." His eyes closed for 1 second. Enzo turned away, hiding amusement. Maeve walked toward the waiting boat. Luca followed. The hotel ballroom had been transformed into neutral territory. Italian men in black suits stood on one side. Irish syndicate representatives stood on the other. At the center sat Vittorio Vescari, Luca's uncle. He was a handsome man in his 60s, silver-haired and immaculate, with the kind of smile used to approve executions. Maeve entered beside Luca. The room changed. Every gaze moved toward her artificial eye, then toward the way Luca positioned himself half a step in front of her. Vittorio saw it. His smile deepened. "So," he said, "this is the lighthouse keeper, Maeve met his Chaze. So this is the uncle who needs 30 men to speak to his nephew." Silence spread across the room. Luca did not look at her, but she saw the faint movement of his thumb against his ring. Approval. Vittorio laughed. "I understand the fascination." "There is none," Luca said. Maeve looked at him. The denial should not have mattered. It did. Vittorio noticed that too. "Of course," he said. "You abandoned Naples, defied the council, and killed one of your own men for a woman who does not fascinate you. Riccardo betrayed me. For her. For Doyle." Vittorio spread his hands. "The distinction has become difficult." Maeve placed her father's copied ledger on the table. "Perhaps this will clarify it." She opened to the marked pages. These vessels transported people through Doyle-controlled waters. The black marks correspond to disappearances recorded by European authorities. Vittorio did not look down. "We are discussing family authority. We are discussing the reason Luca refused your order." Vittorio's gaze shifted to her. "You speak for him?" "No one speaks for me," Luca said. Maeve looked at him. Something passed between them. Not agreement. Recognition. Vittorio leaned back. "My nephew believes he can dismantle selected parts of our world while keeping the throne that world built. I have dismantled them," Luca said. "You have weakened us. I removed rot. You declared war on men who made us powerful. I declared war on cowards who sold children." The room grew colder. Vittorio's smile disappeared. "You sound like your brother." Luca became completely still. Maeve felt the wound beneath the words. Vittorio continued. "He also believed conscience made him strong. It made him inconvenient to you. It made him dead." Luca's hand moved beneath his jacket. Maeve touched his sleeve. A light contact, barely there. He stopped. Every person in the room saw it. The feared Luca Vescari had been stopped by the touch of a lighthouse keeper. Vittorio saw it most clearly. "That," he said softly, "is why she cannot remain beside you." Luca turned his head. His expression toward Maeve was not soft. It was worse, dependent, only for a second. Then, the ballroom windows exploded. Gunfire tore through the glass. Men dropped behind tables. Luca threw Maeve to the floor and covered her. Bullets struck the wall behind them. The hotel lights went out. Emergency lamps flooded the room red. Someone shouted in Italian. Another voice shouted in Irish. Both sides began firing. Luca dragged Maeve behind a stone column. "Are you hit?" "No." "Look at me." I said no. "Look at me." She did. His hands moved over her shoulders, arms, and waist, checking for blood with controlled urgency. When he found none, his breathing changed. Only slightly, relief. A second burst of gunfire struck the column. Luca pulled her closer. Their faces were inches apart. His body shielded hers completely. "You were right," Maeve whispered. "About what?" "The hotel is less defensible." His mouth almost moved. Then a man appeared behind them. Maeve saw the reflection in a broken mirror. She pushed Luca aside as the attacker fired. The bullet struck Luca high in the shoulder. He turned, shot the man twice, then staggered. Maeve caught him. Blood spread across his black jacket. "Again?" she said. His face tightened. "You are becoming judgmental." She pulled his arm over her shoulders. "Can you walk? For you? That is not an answer." "Yes." They moved through the smoke toward a service corridor. Enzo and two guards covered them. Behind the ballroom, the hotel descended into chaos. Guests screamed. Sprinklers activated. Water poured from the ceiling as alarms echoed through the hall. Maeve and Luca entered a dark kitchen. He leaned against a steel counter. She tore open his shirt at the shoulder. The bullet had passed through. You need pressure. You need to leave. I am not leaving. His eyes locked on hers. You should. So should you. I cannot. Neither can I. For a moment, neither moved. The kitchen lights flashed red. Water ran down Luca's face. Maeve pressed a towel against his wound. His hand came up and closed around her wrist. Cormac ordered this, he said. Your uncle benefits. Yes. Could they be working together? Yes. Then we expose both. No. She stared at him. No? You return to the lighthouse with Enzo. And you? I end this. How? His silence answered. Maeve stepped closer. You do not get to die because you are afraid of losing control. His gaze darkened. I am not afraid. You are terrified. He looked away. That was confirmation. Maeve's voice softened despite herself. Luca. He turned back. I know what death takes from the people left behind, she said. Do not call revenge protection. His hand tightened around her wrist. The fire alarm pulsed around them. You think I can leave them alive after this? I think you can choose what kind of man stands beside me when it is over. The words escaped before she could stop them. Beside me, Luca heard them. His entire expression changed. Not softened, opened, only a fraction. Maeve, he said. Footsteps approached. The moment shattered. Luca released her and raised his gun. Enzo entered. We have a route out. Luca looked at Maeve once more. Stay beside me. This time, it was not an order. She nodded. They escaped through the underground parking garage. Black SUVs moved between concrete pillars while gunmen fired from upper levels. Luca refused a stretcher and positioned Maeve inside the armored vehicle before entering after her. The moment the doors closed, he pulled her against him. Not romantically, instinctively, his arm wrapped around her head as bullets struck the glass. Maeve's cheek pressed against his chest. His heart was racing, faster than hers. You are bleeding on me, she said. You were nearly shot. So were you. I was shot. She almost laughed from shock. The SUV accelerated into the rain. Luca kept her against him even after the gunfire faded. Maeve became aware of the line of his jaw above her, the controlled rise and fall of his chest, and his hand spread over the back of her head. Slowly, she lifted her face. His gaze lowered. Something dangerous passed between them. Not violence, need. He looked as though he had been denying hunger until it became pain. Maeve's fingers were still gripping his shirt. She did not release it. His mouth moved closer. Then he stopped. Barely an inch remained. Tell me no, he said. The words were rougher than anything she had heard from him. Maeve could feel his breath. She could feel the battle inside him. Dominance held on a leash by permission. Would you stop? She whispered. Yes.